They say a hospital is a place where lives are saved. But there are rooms where no one is meant to return from. At the end of a quiet road in Thailand, there once stood a morgue where the dead did not sleep, and the living were never truly alone. This is not just a ghost story. This is the story of a voice that refused to be silenced. This is the call from the morgue. Chapter 1. The morgue at the end of the road. The provincial hospital of Nakhon Phanom was never quiet. Even at night, ambulance sirens echoed through the streets. Fluorescent lights buzzed endlessly in the corridors, and the smell of disinfectant clung to the air like a second skin. Yet there was one place the noise never reached. A building standing alone at the very end of a narrow dirt road behind the hospital. That building was the morgue. It had no signboard, no welcoming light, just a low concrete structure stained by years of rain and neglect. Surrounded by wild grass that no one bothered to cut anymore. During the day, people passed by it quickly, eyes fixed on the ground. At night, no one passed by at all. The hospital staff believed in silence there, not the peaceful kind, but a silence that pressed against the ears, heavy and unnatural. Even stray dogs refused to linger near the building after sunset. If one did wander too close, it would eventually whimper, tuck its tail, and run. Officially, the morgue was simply a storage facility for bodies awaiting identification or cremation. Unofficially, it was something else entirely. Security guards rarely lasted long. Some quit after a single night shift. Others stayed for weeks, only to leave without explanation, faces pale, eyes hollow, refusing to speak about what they had seen or heard. Those who stayed longer than 3 months were said to change. They grew thin, withdrawn, and developed the unsettling habit of staring at nothing, as if listening to voices only they could hear. Local rumors spread quietly, never spoken too loudly. The morgue, they said, was not empty at night. It was never empty. At exactly 1:13 a.m., something always happened. Lights would flicker, though the wiring had been checked countless times. The air inside the building would grow unnaturally cold, far colder than the refrigeration units could explain. And sometimes, only sometimes, there would be sounds. Soft at first, almost polite. Footsteps. Dragging, slow footsteps, echoing along the tiled floor where no living person stood. The hospital administration dismissed these stories as stress-induced hallucinations, products of exhaustion and superstition. Cameras had been installed, logs reviewed, reports filed and ignored. Officially, nothing unusual had ever been recorded. But the guards knew better. Because even when the cameras showed empty hallways, even when every door was locked and sealed, the sounds still came, and once you heard them, truly heard them, you never forgot. The morgue at the end of the road was not a place for the dead alone. It was a place where something waited. Chapter 2. The New Night Guard. Somchai never planned to work nights, let alone in a place like the morgue. But plans meant nothing when his mother's medical bills piled higher than his pride. When the hospital administrator mentioned extra pay and no patient contact, Somchai nodded before the man finished speaking. Only later did he realize they had avoided saying the word morgue out loud. On his first night, Somchai arrived just before sunset. The sky over Nakhon Phanom was bruised purple, thick with coming rain. The dirt road leading to the morgue felt longer than it looked, stretching unnaturally as he walked, gravel crunching too loudly beneath his boots. Each step echoed in his chest. The building greeted him with silence. Inside, the air was sharp and cold, smelling of disinfectant layered over something older, something faintly sweet and rotten. Fluorescent lights hummed overhead, flickering just enough to make shadows tremble along the walls. Stainless steel doors lined one corridor, each marked with a faded black number. His duties were simple: lock the doors, monitor the cameras, record any unusual activity. The administrator had laughed softly when he said that last part. Nothing ever happens, he'd claimed. Somchai settled into the security desk with a thermos of coffee and a cheap radio murmuring static-laced music. Midnight passed without incident. His nerves slowly relaxed, embarrassment creeping in as he remembered the rumors. Ghost stories. That's all they were. Stories for people who needed excuses to quit. Then the clock ticked over to 1:13 a.m. The radio went silent. Not static, silence. complete and sudden. Somchai frowned and reached to adjust the dial when a sound stopped his hand midair. A voice. It came from the corridor behind him, soft and stretched, as though pulled through water. Somchai? His name. Not shouted, not whispered, spoken with a strange familiarity, like someone savoring the sound of it. Somchai turned slowly, heart hammering. The corridor was empty. The steel doors were closed. The lights burned steadily. Hello? His voice sounded wrong, too loud, too alive. No answer. He laughed nervously, rubbing his arms despite the cold. Someone must be playing a prank. An old speaker system, maybe, a trick of exhaustion. He turned back to the monitors. All camera feeds were frozen on the same frame, an empty hallway. Timestamp blinking 1 hour 13 minutes and 0 seconds. Then, on one screen, a shadow moved. Somchai leaned closer, breath shallow. The shadow did not belong to anyone standing there. And from behind him, once more, the voice called, closer this time. Somchai.
Like and subscribe to Whispering Dark Tales for more chilling ghost stories.
Chapter 3. The body that would not close its eyes. Morning came reluctantly, as if the sun itself hesitated to rise over the hospital grounds. Somchai left the morgue at dawn with stiff legs and a headache that pulsed behind his eyes. He told himself the night had been nothing more than nerves, cheap coffee, and too many stories whispered by people who wanted something to blame. By the time he returned that evening, the memory had already begun to feel unreal. It was the hospital orderly who noticed it first. A sharp intake of breath echoed through the morgue, followed by a quiet curse in Thai. Somchai looked up from the logbook just in time to see the man stumble back from one of the stainless steel tables. His face drained of color. The eyes, the orderly said, they're open. Somchai's stomach tightened. The body lay in cold, artificial stillness beneath the harsh white lights. A young woman, no visible injuries beyond bruises along her arms and collarbone. Her skin had taken on the pale, waxy tone of death, but her eyes were wide open, dark and glassy, fixed on the ceiling. Somchai was certain they had been closed the night before. He remembered it clearly. He had forced himself to look when the shadow moved on the monitor. Had counted the bodies, one by one, just to reassure himself. Room 3, female, eyes shut, peaceful, in a way only the dead could be. Now they stared. One of the nurses approached, fingers trembling as she gently pressed the eyelids down. For a brief moment, they stayed closed. Then, slowly, unnaturally, they slid open again. No muscle twitch, no reflex. Just open. Silence swallowed the room. This happens sometimes, the senior nurse said at last, though her voice lacked conviction. Muscle relaxation, nothing unusual. No one believed her. The woman had arrived the previous night, brought in after a road accident on the highway near the Mekong River. No identification, no family, declared dead at the scene. The paperwork was clean, stamped, final. Too final. Somchai felt a cold sensation creep up his spine, as if invisible fingers traced his vertebrae one by one. He couldn't look away from her eyes. There was something wrong about them, not their emptiness, but the faint suggestion of awareness, as though something behind them had paused rather than ended. When the others left, Somchai remained behind, alone with the body. The lights flickered once. In the reflection of the steel cabinet doors, he thought he saw her eyes shift, just slightly, toward him. He stepped back, heart racing. "You're dead," he whispered, unsure why he needed to say it aloud. The woman did not blink. But deep in Somchai's chest, a terrible thought took root and refused to die. What if she had never been? Chapter 4. The dream that smelled of formalin. Somchai did not remember falling asleep. One moment he was sitting at the security desk, eyes burning as he stared at the monitors. And the next, he was standing. The morgue was dark. Not the dim, artificial darkness of switched-off lights, but something deeper, heavier, the kind that pressed against his chest and made breathing feel like work. The air was thick with the unmistakable stench of formalin, sharp enough to sting his eyes, sweet enough to make his stomach turn. The fluorescent lights flickered to life one by one, revealing the room in fragments. Metal tables, cabinets, Shadows stretched too long to belong to anything real. At the center of the room lay the woman from room 3. She was no longer on the cold storage tray. Instead, she rested on an autopsy table. Her body uncovered, skin pale beneath the harsh light. Her eyes were closed now, but Somchai knew better than to feel relief. He tried to move closer. His legs refused. Then her head turned. There was no sound of bone or muscle shifting. It happened smoothly, impossibly, until her face was angled toward him. Her lips did not move, yet her voice filled the room, echoing inside his skull rather than his ears. They said I was gone. Somchai swallowed, throat dry. You are, he said, though the words felt weak even as he spoke them. Her eyelids fluttered open. Up close, her eyes were not empty. They were wet, afraid. I could still hear them. She continued. I could feel the cold. I tried to scream. The sound of footsteps approached from somewhere behind Somchai. Heavy, deliberate. He wanted to turn, but his body remained frozen, trapped between terror and disbelief. Figures entered the room, doctors, nurses, but their faces were blurred, smoothed over like unfinished sculptures. Hands gloved in white reached for metal instruments that gleamed under the light. The woman's eyes locked onto Somchai's. They cut me open, she said. I was still here. The smell of formalin intensified, burning his lungs. He gagged, chest tightening, heart pounding so hard he thought it might tear free. Stop, he whispered. Please. The figures leaned over her. A scalpel was raised. Somchai screamed and woke up. He was slumped in his chair, drenched in sweat. The monitors glowed softly. The clock on the wall read 1:14 a.m. 1 minute passed. His shirt clung to his back, cold and damp. As he stood, a sharp chemical scent rose from the fabric. Formalin. Somchai stared down at himself, breath trembling. Dreams were not supposed to leave smells behind. From the corridor, faint and unmistakable, came a soft sound, almost like someone exhaling in relief. And then, just once, he heard her voice again, no longer afraid. You heard me.
Like and subscribe to Whispering Dark Tales for more chilling ghost stories.
Chapter 5. The camera that recorded nothing. Somchai reported the incident the following morning. He chose his words carefully, stripping away anything that might sound like fear or superstition. He spoke of malfunctions, of frozen screens and electrical interference, of a strange smell that had no clear source. The administrator listened with polite impatience, nodding in all the right places. Old building, the man said at last. Old wiring, happens all the time. A technician was sent to inspect the cameras. By noon, the verdict came back. No faults detected. All systems functional. No missing footage. Somchai wasn't surprised. That night, he stayed late at the security desk, watching the monitors with an intensity that made his eyes ache. The woman's body had been moved back into cold storage, labeled once more as unidentified female. Room 3. At 1:12 a.m., everything was normal. At 1:13, the screen stuttered. Not black, not static, just a subtle distortion, like a breath-fogging glass. The timestamp froze. Every camera showed the same empty corridor, from the same angle, as if reality itself had stalled. Somchai checked the live feed indicator. Still on. Behind him, the temperature dropped. He stood slowly, turning toward the hallway. The lights were steady. The steel doors remained closed. Yet the air pressed against his skin, cold and damp, carrying a faint metallic tang beneath the disinfectant. Then came the sound. A soft drag, rubber against tile. Footsteps. Somchai backed toward the desk, pulse roaring in his ears. He glanced back at the monitors. Nothing. No movement, no shadow, no anomaly. A voice spoke near his left ear, low and intimate. You can see me now. Somchai spun around. The corridor was empty. A hand touched his shoulder. He cried out, stumbling forward, crashing into the desk. Coffee spilled. The radio screeched back to life with sudden static. The lights flickered violently, then steadied. The touch was gone. So was the cold. Later, while reviewing the footage, Somchai found the only irregularity of the night. Between 1 hour 13 minutes and 0 seconds and 1 hour 17 minutes and 0 seconds. There was nothing. Not darkness, not corruption. Nothing at all. 4 minutes erased cleanly, as if they had never existed. When Somchai asked the senior guard about it, the man avoided his eyes. She calls the ones who listen. He muttered, if you answer, she remembers you. Somchai felt his stomach twist. Who is she? The guard hesitated, then shook his head. It's better if you don't ask, he said, the cameras can't see her. That night, lying awake long after his shift ended, Somchai realized something far worse. She didn't need the cameras. She had already found him. Chapter 6. The name that was erased. Somchai did not intend to look through the records. At first, it was only curiosity, a quiet, rational need to reassure himself that there was an explanation. That paperwork and procedures still governed the place he worked. Ghosts belonged to rumors. Documents belonged to truth. But truth, he would learn, could be buried just as deeply as the dead. The records room sat on the second floor. A narrow space filled with metal cabinets and the stale smell of old paper. Files were stacked by year, their labels fading, ink bleeding into yellowed folders. Somchai waited until the afternoon lull, when nurses gathered for lunch and footsteps faded from the hall. Room 3, unidentified female. The folder was thin, too thin. Inside were only the basics, estimated age, cause of death listed as traumatic injuries from road accident, time of arrival, time of death, everything stamped, signed, approved. No name. No next of kin. No autopsy notes. Somchai frowned. Even unidentified bodies had more than this. There were always questions, always delays. He checked the digital archive next. Typing in the case number, the system returned an error. File not found. As if the case had never existed. A chill crept through him. Slowly, carefully, he widened his search. Older records, handwritten logs, maintenance notes. That was when he found it. A ledger tucked behind a row of newer files. Its spine cracked with age. Inside, in uneven handwriting, was a brief entry dated 12 years earlier. Female patient, Chanarong. Admitted unconscious. Brain activity inconclusive. Status pending. Somchai's breath caught. Chanarong. The name felt heavy in his mouth, as if speaking it might summon something listening nearby. He flipped the page. Nothing. The following entries jumped ahead by days, then weeks, with no mention of her again. Someone had removed her. The lights flickered overhead. Somchai froze, listening. The records room fell into an unnatural stillness. The hum of the building suddenly gone. His phone buzzed weakly in his pocket, screen flashing before going dark. From somewhere below, from the direction of the morgue, came a faint sound. A knock. Not loud, not urgent. 3 soft taps, patient and precise. Somchai backed away from the cabinet, heart pounding. He didn't need to look at the clock to know the time. 1:13 p.m. Broad daylight. His phone vibrated once more. Against all reason, the screen lit up. A single word appeared, typed into a blank notification. Chanarong. The knocking stopped. In its place, a whisper rose through the building's vents, brushing against his ear like a breath. You found me. Somchai stood alone in the records room, clutching a name that was never meant to be remembered. And somewhere below, in room 3, something stirred, aware now that it had been seen.
Like and subscribe to Whispering Dark Tales for more chilling ghost stories.
Chapter 7. Knocking from the cold drawer. The knocking began just after midnight. Somchai was sitting at the security desk, the name Chanarong still echoing in his thoughts like a curse he had accidentally spoken aloud. He had not told anyone what he found in the records room. Names had power here, everyone knew that, even if they pretended otherwise. At 12:47 a.m., the morgue was quiet. At 12:48, something struck metal. Knock. Somchai's head snapped up. The sound came from the cold storage corridor. He held his breath, listening. Old buildings made noises all the time, pipes contracting, machines settling. He told himself this was no different. Then it came again. Knock, knock. Deliberate, hollow, metal on metal. Somchai stood, every muscle tight, and took a step toward the corridor. The lights above flickered as if reacting to his movement. The temperature dropped sharply, fog blooming in the air before his face. The sound came a third time. Knock, knock, knock. Room 3. His feet carried him forward despite every instinct screaming to stop. The stainless steel drawers loomed before him, numbered in black paint, his gaze fixed on 3. The knocking came from inside. Somchai's hand hovered over the handle. His fingers trembled violently, skin already numb from the cold. "No," he whispered, "you're not alive." Silence. Then something inside the drawer moved. A slow, scraping shift, like fingernails dragging across steel. Somchai screamed and yanked the drawer open. It was empty. No body, no sheet, no blood. Just frost-coated metal and the echo of his own breathing. He staggered back, heart slamming against his ribs. "This isn't real," he muttered. "This isn't." The drawer slammed shut on its own. Behind him, breath touched his neck. Not cold. Warm. A woman's voice whispered, trembling with restrained fury. "They put me here, before I was gone." Somchai spun around. The corridor stretched longer than it should have, shadows pooling at the far end. For a brief moment, just long enough to break him, he saw her. Chanarong stood barefoot on the tile floor, hospital bracelet still clinging to her wrist. Her chest bore a faint surgical line, dark and uneven. Her eyes were open, wide, alive with pain. Then the lights exploded into brightness. The vision vanished. Orderlies burst in, shouting, drawn by the noise. Room 3 stood sealed. The drawer was locked. The logs showed no access. Somchai collapsed to the floor, shaking. Later, when no one was looking, he noticed something impossible. His palm was bruised. 5 distinct finger marks. Pressed from the inside. Chapter 8. The body that refused to burn. By morning, the hospital administration had decided enough was enough. Unidentified bodies were a liability. The longer they remained, the more questions they raised, and questions were dangerous things. Without ceremony or discussion, the order was given. The woman from room 3 would be cremated that afternoon. Somchai learned of the decision from a passing nurse. Her voice was low, uneasy, as though speaking the words too loudly might draw attention. "She doesn't belong here anymore," the nurse said. "They want it done quickly." Somchai's chest tightened. He wanted to protest, to say her name out loud, to insist that something was wrong. But fear sealed his lips. Deep down, he knew the truth would not stop what was coming. The body was prepared just before noon. Wrapped in a simple white cloth, placed onto the transport gurney. Chanarong looked smaller than before, less like a threat, more like a forgotten thing. But as the wheels rolled toward the crematorium, the air shifted. The temperature dropped sharply. The gurney shuddered. The engine of the transport van coughed once, then died. Technicians tried again. Nothing. A third attempt ended the same way. The dashboard lights flickering wildly before going dark. The van sat useless beneath the sun, as silent as the body it carried. Whispers spread quickly. Someone crossed themselves. Another muttered a prayer. The hospital director made a call. An hour later, a monk arrived. He was old, thin as a reed, his saffron robes faded by time. The moment he stepped into the morgue, he stopped, his eyes fixed on room 3, though the body had already been moved. "She is still here," he said quietly. The words cut through the room like a blade. The monk approached the gurney, placed one hand gently over the wrapped form, and closed his eyes. His breathing slowed. The room seemed to listen. Then he shook his head. "This soul does not seek rest," he said. "It seeks acknowledgement." The director frowned. "She's dead." The monk's eyes opened, sharp and unyielding. "Her heart stopped," he replied. "Her suffering did not." As if in response, the gurney lurched violently. The white cloth darkened at the center, a thin line seeping through. Not blood. Something older. The monk stepped back. "If you burn her now," he warned, "you will only scatter the anger." No one argued. The cremation was postponed. That night, as Somchai returned to his post, the morgue felt different, heavier, alert. At 1:13 a.m., The voice returned, not whispering this time, but clear and steady. "Don't let them erase me again." Somchai closed his eyes, knowing he had already crossed a line he could never retreat from.
Like and subscribe to Whispering Dark Tales for more chilling ghost stories.
Chapter 9. The Confession in the Dark. Sleep abandoned Somchai completely. When he closed his eyes, he saw metal tables. When he opened them, he smelled antiseptic and rust. By the third night after the failed cremation, he no longer knew whether he was awake or dreaming, only that the morgue had begun to expect him. At 1:13 a.m., the lights dimmed without going out. The air thickened. Somchai sat alone at the desk, hands clenched so tightly his nails cut into his palms. He didn't look at the monitors. He already knew what they would show. Nothing. A chair scraped across the floor behind him. "Slow, careful. You wanted the truth," a voice said, not hers. Somchai turned. A man stood near the autopsy table, dressed in an old surgical gown. The fabric yellowed with age. His face was visible, painfully so, lined, exhausted, human, a doctor. "I didn't mean to," the man continued. "None of us did." The room shifted. Walls faded into darkness, leaving only the table, the doctor, and Somchai. On the steel surface lay Chanarong, eyes half open, chest rising shallowly beneath a surgical drape. Alive. Barely. She was declared brain dead, the doctor said, voice shaking. But the tests were rushed. The pressure, he swallowed hard. There were donors waiting. Somchai's stomach churned. The doctor's hands trembled as he reached for instruments that appeared on the table as if summoned by memory alone. She tried to move. He whispered, "Just a finger. I saw it. I chose not to see." Chanarong's eyes rolled toward Somchai. Tears slid down her temples, soaking into the metal beneath her head. "They said I couldn't feel it." Her voice echoed, not from her mouth, but from everywhere at once. They were wrong. The doctor dropped to his knees. "We told ourselves she was already gone." He sobbed. "It was easier that way." The scalpel fell. The sound rang like a bell. Somchai screamed for them to stop, but no sound left his throat. His body refused to move, trapped as the past replayed itself with merciless clarity. When it ended, the room fell silent. The doctor looked up at Somchai, eyes hollow. "We erased her name," he said. "That was the only way we could sleep." The figure dissolved into shadow. The morgue returned. Somchai collapsed against the desk, retching. The clock ticked to 1:14 a.m. From the corridor came Chanarong's voice, no longer trembling, only steady. "Now you know." The monitors flickered once. On one screen, for the first time, she appeared, standing behind Somchai, eyes open, waiting. Chapter 10. The Truth That Demands a Price. Somchai stopped pretending that he had a choice. The truth had already lodged itself inside him, heavy and sharp, cutting deeper with every breath he took. Silence no longer offered safety. It only delayed the inevitable. The monk returned that evening without being called. Somchai found him standing outside the morgue, barefoot on the dirt road, eyes fixed on the building as if listening to something only he could hear. "She is growing stronger," the monk said softly. "Because you listened." Somchai's voice cracked. "What does she want?" The monk turned to him. "Not revenge," he replied. "Recognition, and release." Inside the morgue, the air trembled faintly. The lights dimmed, then steadied. Somchai felt it then, a presence at his back. Patient, watchful. "If I tell the truth," Somchai asked, "what happens to me?" The monk hesitated. "You will not be able to walk away unchanged," he said. "Some debts are not paid with words alone." That night, Somchai gathered everything he could find: old ledgers, partial digital backups, maintenance logs, anonymized reports, fragments of a crime carefully scattered across years. Each document felt heavier than the last, as though the past resisted being lifted into the light. At 1:13 a.m., Chanarong appeared beside him, not as a shadow, but as a woman. Her wounds were visible now. The surgical line across her chest glistened faintly, as if freshly made. Her eyes met his. "I don't want to be alone anymore," she said. Somchai nodded, throat tight. "I'll speak." She stepped closer. The cold was unbearable. He felt it sink into his bones. "Then I will stay," she replied. The next day, Somchai contacted an independent journalist. He did not use his name. He did not need to. That evening, the hospital administration sensed something shifting. Conversations stopped when Somchai entered rooms. Doors closed softly behind him. He was reassigned, questioned, watched. At night, the morgue changed. The footsteps no longer dragged. They walked. Purposefully. The cameras began to fail outside the morgue as well, hallways. Offices, records rooms, truth, it seemed, disrupted more than just the dead. On the eve of the exposé, Somchai stood alone in the morgue, phone in hand, thumb hovering over the screen. "If I do this," he whispered into the cold air, "you'll be free." Chanarong's voice came from everywhere and nowhere. "And you?" she asked gently. "Are you?" The clock ticked toward 1:13. Somchai pressed send.
Like and subscribe to Whispering Dark Tales for more chilling ghost stories.
Chapter 11. The Voices That Should Not Be Heard. The article went live at dawn. By noon, the hospital was no longer just a place of illness and recovery. It had become a rumor with a pulse. Phones rang endlessly. Administrators locked themselves into offices. Nurses whispered in corners, eyes darting towards ceilings and vents. And then, the voices began. It started subtly. A janitor swore he heard someone call his nickname from the morgue hallway. Though no one was there, a nurse froze mid-shift, insisting a woman had thanked her for listening. 2 interns refused to return after hearing slow breathing behind a sealed door. At 1:13 p.m., the elevators stalled simultaneously. At 1:13 a.m., the lights flickered across the entire hospital, not just the morgue. Somchai watched it unfold from the security desk, a knot tightening in his chest. Chanarong stood beside him now without warning, sometimes reflected in glass, sometimes not reflected at all. She no longer whispered. She spoke. "They hear me," she said, almost surprised. Somchai shook his head. This wasn't supposed to spread. She tilted her head. "You gave me my name back," she replied. "Names travel." The monk returned again, this time with others, older monks. Their expressions grim. They walked the corridors chanting softly, attempting to contain something that no longer respected walls or doors. "It's too late to confine her to one place," one of them said. "The truth opened many ears." That night, Somchai heard more than one voice. Men, women, some crying, some angry, some confused. Not all of them were Chanarong. The monitors flickered, briefly displaying figures standing where no one should be, beside beds. In stairwells, at the ends of halls. Each image vanished the moment it was noticed. Somchai covered his ears, breath ragged. "What are you doing?" he begged. Chanarong's expression darkened. "I am not calling them," she said. "They are answering." The hospital had never been empty. It had only been quiet. At 1:13 a.m., every clock in the building stopped. In the silence that followed, a single truth settled over Somchai like a shroud. He had not unleashed one voice. He had broken a seal. And once broken, it could never be fully closed again. Chapter 12. The Price of Silence. Silence returned to the hospital in fragments. Not peace, never peace, but gaps between sounds. Like breaths held too long. The monks' chants faded at dawn, leaving behind a building that felt hollowed out. Staff avoided eye contact. Patients asked to be transferred. No one spoke of the clocks that had stopped at 1:13. All frozen mid-tick like insects in amber. Somchai knew then that silence was no longer free. The senior monk found him in the morgue, standing before room 3. The drawer was empty now. Yet the cold lingered, seeping from the steel into the air. "You have done what was needed," the monk said, "but not what was required." Somchai didn't turn. "What's the difference?" "Truth opens doors," the monk replied. "Silence closes them. Someone must stand in the doorway." Somchai felt her before he saw her. Chanarong stood at his side, closer than ever, her presence heavy with a calm that frightened him more than rage. "They want to put it back the way it was," she said, "to forget again." "I won't let them," Somchai answered. She looked at him, searching. "They will try," she said softly, "and they will succeed, unless there is an anchor." The monk's voice lowered. An anchor binds the restless to one place. One witness. One listener. One who stays. Somchai finally turned. You're saying? I am saying. The monk interrupted gently. That some debts end with death. Others begin after. The choice was suddenly clear. Brutal in its simplicity. Walk away. Let time dull the outrage. Let the voices fade back into walls and vents. Or remain, present, listening, remembering, so the truth could not be buried again. Somchai laughed once, short and broken. So I become the lock. You become the door, the monk corrected. That night, Somchai sat at the security desk as he always had. He logged the time, checked the monitors, waited. At 1:13 a.m., the air shifted. Chanarong stood before him, her wounds lighter now, the edges of her form less sharp. If you stay, she said, I can rest. Somchai nodded. Then stay I will. She smiled, small, grateful, unbearably human. The clocks resumed their ticking. Elsewhere in the hospital, the voices quieted, not gone, never gone, but contained. As dawn crept through the high windows, Somchai realized the truth of the monk's warning. Silence had a price, and he had agreed to pay it, one night at a time.
Like and subscribe to Whispering Dark Tales for more chilling ghost stories.
Chapter 13. The night that would not end. Morning came, but it did not arrive for Somchai. Sunlight filtered through hospital windows. Staff changed shifts, charts were updated, and patients stirred, but the morgue remained wrapped in the same dim half-light it had held since the previous night. The clock above the security desk ticked steadily, yet the hands refused to move forward. Somchai sat unmoving, eyes fixed on the monitors. He did not feel tired. He did not feel hungry. He did not feel time. Chanarong stood nearby, no longer fully solid, her outlines softening at the edges like mist caught in human shape. She watched him with something close to concern. You should be exhausted, she said. I think I passed that point. Somchai replied quietly. The monk returned at noon. He paused when he saw Somchai, studying him carefully. You did not leave, the monk said. Somchai shook his head. I couldn't. The monk nodded, unsurprised. The doorway has accepted you. As night fell again, without Somchai ever feeling the day pass, the hospital changed. Fewer voices now, fewer echoes. The restless presence that had once spilled into hallways retreated, drawn back toward the morgue like water finding its lowest point. At 1:13 a.m., the air did not grow colder. Instead, it grew still. Chanarong faced the cold storage corridor. Eyes distant. They're calling me, she said, not in anger, in memory. Somchai followed her gaze. For the first time, he saw them, not clearly, but enough. Shapes, faces, men and women whose names had been lost, whose endings had been rushed or erased. They did not speak, they waited. You don't have to go alone, Somchai said. She looked at him then, truly looked. You already came with me. The realization settled slowly, gently. Somchai's reflection no longer appeared in the steel doors. When an orderly passed through the morgue, he did not see Somchai. He shivered, rubbed his arms, and left quickly, unaware of the man seated at the desk. The monk returned once more before dawn. He bowed, to Chanarong, and then to Somchai. Guard well, he said, and listen kindly. The clock ticked. Time began to move again, for everyone else. For Somchai, the night remained. And within that endless night, he sat at the threshold, neither living nor dead, holding the door open so that no voice would ever need to scream to be heard again. Chapter 14. When the dead are finally named. The hospital could not contain the truth anymore. What began as an anonymous exposé became a chain reaction. Independent investigators arrived. Journalists demanded records long thought destroyed. Old staff members were summoned for questioning. Some cooperative, others visibly terrified. Names resurfaced. Not just Chanarong's. One by one, the dead were identified, patients whose files had been altered, delayed, or quietly erased. Families who had mourned without bodies were called back to offices they never wanted to see again. Outside the hospital gates, candles appeared. Then flowers. Then photographs held by trembling hands. Inside, Consequences followed swiftly. A former administrator collapsed during questioning, clutching his chest, whispering that someone was standing behind the interviewer. A surgeon involved in the old transplant program resigned, then vanished from his home days later, leaving every light on and every mirror covered. Another tried to flee the country. He was found days later at a roadside shrine, barefoot, eyes wide open, murmuring names no one remembered him knowing. The monks returned, not to contain, but to guide. These are not punishments, the senior monk told the gathered families. They are acknowledgments delayed too long. Within the morgue, Somchai watched it all unfold from the edge of the world. He felt the names spoken aloud ripple through the air like bells struck underwater. Each one loosened something, eased a pressure he had not known was there. Chanarong stood beside him, her form now steady, her expression peaceful. "They are saying us," she said, out loud. "Yes," Somchai replied, "they can't pretend anymore." As the last of the investigations concluded, something changed. The footsteps faded. The voices quieted, not into silence, but into rest. At 1:13 a.m., the clocks continued to tick. For the first time since the door had opened, nothing answered the hour. Chanarong turned to Somchai. "This is where I stop," she said. He nodded, though a tightness formed in his chest. "And me?" She smiled gently. "You are part of the story now." She stepped back, toward the corridor that no longer felt endless. Light, soft, unfamiliar, gathered around her. Not bright enough to blind, only enough to show the way. Before she vanished, she spoke one last time. "Thank you for keeping your promise." When she was gone, the morgue felt empty for the first time. Truly empty. Somchai remained at the desk, alone with ticking clocks and clean air. Above ground, the hospital slowly returned to normal. Below, the door stood closed, but not locked.
Like and subscribe to Whispering Dark Tales for more chilling ghost stories.
Chapter 15. The Voices That Remain. Years passed. The old morgue at the end of the dirt road was sealed and abandoned. The hospital built a new facility on higher ground, brighter and cleaner, with glass walls and modern lights meant to reassure the living. Officially, the old building was deemed unsafe, structural damage, outdated systems, no reason to keep it standing. Unofficially, no one wanted it torn down. Grass grew wild around the cracked concrete. The road leading to it slowly disappeared beneath weeds and red dust. At night, the building returned to what it had always been, quiet, watchful, untouched by time. New staff heard the stories eventually. They always did. They were told that long ago. A night guard named Somchai had worked there. That he vanished without notice. No resignation, no body, just an empty chair, a completed logbook, and a clock that kept perfect time. Most dismissed it as folklore. Until they noticed one small detail. Every incident report from the old morgue, no matter the year, was signed in the same careful handwriting. At exactly 1:13 a.m., the air around the abandoned building still changed. Not colder, just attentive. Locals walking home late swore they heard footsteps pacing inside, steady and patient, as if someone were still on duty. Sometimes, if a passerby stopped too long, they heard a voice. Not frightening, not angry. A calm reminder, spoken just once. Listen. Those who heard it often dreamed of hospital corridors they had never walked, of names they did not recognize but somehow understood. When they woke, the dreams faded, but the feeling remained, heavy and instructive. The dead, it seemed, were no longer shouting. They were being remembered. As for Somchai, opinions differed. Some believed he died that night and became part of the place, bound to the morgue as its final guardian. Others claimed he still lived, unseen, walking the thin line between worlds because someone had to. The monks offered a simpler answer. Some doors, they said, are not meant to be closed forever. They are meant to be watched. And on nights when the wind moves just right through the broken windows of the old morgue, two presences can be felt. One, gentle and distant, finally at rest. The other, steady and enduring. A man sitting at a desk, listening carefully, making sure that if the dead ever call again, someone will answer. Some stories end when the truth is revealed. Others never truly end, because someone is still listening. If you ever hear a voice calling your name in a place meant for the dead, remember this story. And remember, the dead do not call for fear. They call to be heard.
Like and subscribe to Whispering Dark Tales for more chilling ghost stories.